AI is and can transform a financial advisor practice. The challenge is we're also in the middle of a ridiculous hype cycle.
So how does this AI cycle compare, though, to robo-advisors? How different is this one?
This is not the time to be making a big investment in a new tech stack. The biggest problem for most advisors is going to be going in with 2 feet in some solution that seems like it's going to solve some future problem, only to have that entire problem set obviated by some free tool 2 months later.
What other roles in our industry do you think are going to be replaced by AI in the next few years?
Some of the backshop stuff will get more efficient. Moving more and more of that lower level work to AI has the short-term benefit of, yeah, maybe you save some payroll cost, but you are absolutely cutting your nose off to spite your face if you're thinking about your business longevity.
Anything we should be doing to stay ahead of the curve or to be prepared for these quick changes that are happening? What are the skills that we should be doubling down on as advisors?
I think the financial advisor industry is rapidly moving toward the coaching model. That is the long-term success path. I'll give you 2 answers for the 2 things that advisors do. And let's just be really honest. Advisors do 2 things.
Today, we're talking about AI and the future of financial advice and hopefully staying ahead of the curve. We've got Dave Nadig. Dave spent his really the last few decades. It seems like you've been at the forefront of financial innovation. So you've been, correct me if I'm wrong, CIO, a researcher, ETF pioneer, and one of the earliest voices warning or also welcoming the rise of digital advice. And the thing I like about you is that you're sort of living in the future. It seems like you're able to see around corners. So today, I hope you can help us, financial advisors, understand how we could best position ourselves and just get prepared for what might be coming so that we can grow stronger businesses, serve clients better, and then make sure that AI is a competitive advantage and not a threat. You've been talking about the future of advice for a long time. And now with AI, it feels like something is shifting. And we're seeing note-taking, preparing emails and everything, like even AI-powered planning. But at the same time, some advisors still think this is another hype cycle. So where do you think we actually are right now with AI in financial advice?
Well, I think they're both right. That's the great part, right? So I think there is a very real kernel of truth that AI is and can transform a financial advisor practice. The challenge is we're also in the middle of a ridiculous hype cycle. And so when you have those sort of 2 things competing, the real challenge for advisors is figuring out where it actually makes sense in their practice versus where they're just being sold something. And unlike other innovations we've seen in the financial advice market, whether it's new products, right, ETFs coming online, things like that, whether it's new ways of doing business, UMA accounts, things like that, whether it's new ways of delivering advice through apps and, the sort of mid-tier pseudo robo advice platforms, all of those things have actually taken a reasonably long time to come to market. It hasn't been overnight. All of a sudden, everybody has a robo platform. Those took, 5-10 years before we really had that full cycle. And I would say we're sort of at the tail end of the robo advisor cycle, where we've had a couple of dominant firms really establish themselves. Their value proposition is now really well understood. And I think most financial advisors have now calmed down and realized that Google isn't going to launch a robo advisor that takes away all of their business. So we've had that full cycle of growth and hype, and then adoption, and then sort of, most of the hype disappearing. And now we've got the core tools that are really valuable. Same thing happened with direct indexing, right? Direct indexing was going to be the great ETF killer. Nobody was ever going to buy a packaged product again. Well, no, that's not really true. Quietly, the direct indexing market became a $1 trillion market, which is still only 10% of ETFs, but it didn't take over. Nothing ever takes over. So I think it's easy to get caught up in that. Where the real value is now for advisors is simple productivity gains. And I think that's the challenge, because when you have everybody from Morningstar to Orion to InvestNet to Schwab to Fidelity all pitching their AI enhanced whatever to advisors, it's very easy to get caught up in promises of, oh, well, now you're just going to be able to take your risk model and dump all your clients into it. You're going to get perfect customized advisory plans for every customer. Well, no, that's not really what it's going to do for you today. People are developing stuff that might be interesting for that long term, but that's not the now. But what is the now is AI meeting prep, note taking, all those things. They are universally understood to be low-hanging fruit, and they're correctly understood to be low-hanging fruit for not just advisors, but anybody who's in this sort of information and meeting business. There are genuine, real productivity gains to be made by using AI well and smartly in your business. I do this all the time in my day-to-day work, and I'm not a financial advisor. And advisors that I know and work with are also doing this, and they are financial advisors, but the tool sets are largely the same. They're around managing the information around your client interactions, not replacing your client interactions.
So how does this AI cycle, or how does this new technology compare though to robo-advisors, which took 10 years to figure out and then not be scared anymore, or however long it took? How different is this one compared to robo-advisors specifically?
Largely because of speed. It is different because of the speed with which things happen. And it's not just the go-to-market strategy that is being very quickly adopted here. The core underlying technology is literally being fully revisioned every 3 weeks. That's an unprecedented tech adoption or tech growth cycle in my lifetime, in my career, right? I mean, think about things like the adoption of broadband or the rise of the internet or online, people just ordering goods and services online. Those took years, if not decades, to really develop and evolve and change, right? We talk about Web 1.0 and Web 2.0. Well, that was 30 years. We went from Web 1 to Web 2. Here we're going from dumb, largely useless AI 12 months ago to very smart, very capable agentic AI now in just 12 months. And if you look at the sort of roadmap for how these technologies are going to get integrated, the biggest problem for most advisors is going to be going in with 2 feet in some solution that seems like it's going to solve some future problem, only to have that entire problem set obviated by some free tool 2 months later. So the acceleration in the offerings is so ridiculous. And the features that are going to get bolted onto these things are just going to happen day by day by day. I think it's difficult to keep up. So what I would caution advisors is this is not the time to be making a big investment in a new tech stack. It's a great time to be talking to your existing providers about what they're actually doing and what they're planning on doing. So regardless of who you're working with, if you're a Schwab advisor, well, rather than spending all of your time looking at InvestNet offerings to see what might be better, have you actually talked to Schwab because they're doing a lot? And you can say the same thing for Fidelity. You can say the same thing for your data provider, somebody like a Morningstar. If you're with somebody like an Orion, you can say the same thing. All of these firms have big projects in place. They're listening to advisors. And rather than make a big move, lean into what you've already got and see where you can actually get those productivity gains.
Do you think Schwab or any of the big companies, they're investing a lot into AI right now? Are they going to hold that for their individual advisors? Do they really care about RIAs and advisors? You know what I mean? Like, are they going to actually want to help independent RIAs out there that are on the
if they're not, somebody else will. And I think that's sort of the whatever the inverse of the tragedy of the commons here would be. The barriers to entry here are fairly low. Now, most of the people in the AI development world would not say that, but from my perspective, looking from the outside, looking at the kind of build outs we did for things like T+1, right? The kinds of money that's being spent at the local level, like inside Schwab, this isn't a $500 million job inside Schwab. They're using existing tools. They're not building their own AI. They're using other people's AI in their business processes. That's very hard to build a barrier to entry around, because not only does a Schwab or a Fidelity have to make their own call about, yes, we're going to work with Anthropic, or yes, we're going to work with Google Gemini, and that's going to be our engine. They also then have to figure out what to do with that. So the next person, competing against them might choose a different AI provider who then leapfrogs a capability set. So I'll give you let's pick a really simple example. A thing everybody wants to be able to do with an AI is have it just read all your documents for you, put them all in the right place, get them into your CRM, update. We know that's a huge part of the advisor onboarding process, or just managing a client. There's a life change, a death in the family, an estate transaction, something like that. Just managing the documentation is a nightmare. Every advisor knows that. Folks like Schwab are spending lots of money on AI augmented, creation, collection, and collation of these data sets. That's a great project. The problem is, within 6 months, somebody that we're not talking about is going to launch the better mousetrap version of that that's free and just works. because that's what we've seen in AI development already, right? We saw, I mean, just think about what happened in the last 6 months, right? We had China come out with DeepSeek, which all of a sudden showed the entire AI industry what agentic processing could really look like. And then 6 months later, we've got an explosion of agents in AI doing kinds of work we didn't even think possible. So we're going to continue to see that cycle. I really encourage folks, don't get hung up on the individual thing it says it's going to be able to do for you. Focus on what it can do for you right now. So the best tools on the market right now, I think, are the ones that have been the most battle tested. Like AI note takers was a very early use case because voice recognition turned out to be something AI got good at very quickly. So whether you're using something like Otter, Fathom, or any of the folks that are in that space, all of those tools have gotten exceptionally good. So if you haven't at least started there, you're already behind the curve.
Okay. Now, what other, so that I'm thinking about what's getting replaced. So if you had someone in the meeting taking notes for you, that person's replaced. What other roles in our industry do you think are going to be replaced by AI in the next few years?
I think some of the backstop stuff is going to slowly get wedged out. I'm not a big believer that that AI is going to be a net negative employment impact on the financial advice industry, because fundamentally financial advisors are in the business of being human beings and talking to other human beings. And so some of the backstop stuff will get more efficient. So, your compliance officer will be able to handle more workload without an assistant. The person who's managing, your statement process may be able to handle more than they were able to before. But I don't think we're kicking huge functions out. I don't think you're going to have your AI compliance officer without the guy there too.
What about just the plan builder, paraplanners?
Paraplanners, yeah. The paraplanning thing is legit. And I think the advisor business is facing the same conundrum a lot of services businesses are facing, whether you're an investment banker or an asset manager or a guy running a plumbing business. There is now this problem, which is the lowest level employee in your process can now probably have a lot of their work automated away from them. So yeah, maybe your firm had, I don't know, 6 advisors and 3 paraplanners supporting them or something like that. Maybe your model was the opposite of that, maybe a lot of paraplanners. But let's say you had 6 advisors and 3 paraplanners, and they're the ones sitting there grinding all the, Mrs. Smith's documents, helping create the plans, running it through Riskalyze, whatever your process is. Yes, you might now be able to do that with 2 instead of 3. The problem is, congratulations, you've just cut your employee pipeline down by a third. Because the point of hiring a paraplanner is not simply to extract widget production from them, it's to train a paraplanner on how your process works, how you think about the world, how you invest money if you're a direct investing advisor. Like, that's the point of having the paraplanner, not just getting the ticket punched on getting Mrs. Smith's project done. So moving more and more of that lower level work to AI has the short-term benefit of, yeah, maybe you save some payroll cost, but you are absolutely cutting your nose off to spite your face if you're thinking about your business longevity. And that's every advisor is going to have to make that call themselves.
Interesting. So what are the skills that that we should be doubling down on as advisors? I'm thinking of actual lead advisors of a firm. What should we be focusing on moving forward as it will continue to get better and better at the technical aspects of all of the things that we do, right? What should we be practicing or getting better at?
So from a doing I'll give you 2 answers for the 2 things that advisors do. And let's just be really honest. Advisors do 2 things. They do the job of providing financial advice to wealthy families. That's the big job. We get that. They also run a business, right? They're in a business to make money. They have expenses. They have revenues. They have employees. They have real estate headaches, right? They're running a business, but the job is this very different thing than running a business. On the doing the job part of things, I believe advisors should be leaning in hard to their ultimate competitive advantage against all technology, which is the fact that they're living, breathing, meat sack human beings like their clients. That is ultimately the advisor's unassailable superpower. No robo-advisor is ever going to make up for the advisor who sits across from a widow who's dealing with the death of her husband. Right? That is I just refuse to believe any GPT agent ever solves the problem the way that an empathic human being sitting across the table from that family can in that moment, knowing whether, hey, you know what? this is not the month to talk about this. That's an incredibly valuable skill that no agent is ever going to do for you. So I think advisors should be leaning in hard on those human skills. And I think that AI can actually help with that. I think one of the most interesting use cases I've seen for AI have been things like what Brian Porty's been doing at Shaping Wealth, which is taking the AI and using it as kind of a role-playing coach, right? So if you have a widow who's coming in, Mrs. Smith is coming in the door, instead of going into that cold and just sort of flipping through the documents, being like, oh, Mrs. Smith's got 10 million bucks, she's going to be fine, blah, blah, blah. No, instead, you can sit here and have the conversation 3 or 4 times with an agent to talk about different ways of dealing with loss and death and how to have those conversations. That's what keeps that client. We all know you lose 70% of your clients at every one of those transitions. You keep those clients by being a better human being. And I think using an AI for some advisors can really help. The flip side of that is if you're going to use AI to sort of at its grittiest, make more money level, use it on your business side, right? Can you get rid of some of your tax headaches? Can you get rid of some of your compliance headaches? Can you take some of your prospecting and automate that? There's been a lot of development on that part of the world, marketing. I think that can be overused. I think if you lean into AI to write all your marketing materials and all your pitch emails and, all of your, come to my dinner and I'll explain why you shouldn't take your RMD this year. Like if you're going to use AI for all of that, I don't think you're going to be as successful as you expect. But when you find those pockets where the productivity gets you out of the business part and puts you back in the human part, I think that's a win.
That's good. That's really good. So communication coach, using AI as kind of a communication coach. That's really interesting. What's your thoughts on some of those scenarios that they've run? I think it was with doctors where they were, I don't know if you've seen those.
Yeah, the study where they thought they were better, but they were worse.
Well, I thought the one that I saw was that it was human doctors and AI, whatever.
Oh,
doctor.
yeah, that one.
And
yeah.
The human doctor had a lot more empathy when the person was evaluating it. They felt, it was all verbally, there was no one they were talking to, but it felt like empathy was achieved, even though it wasn't a real human being. That was a little bit freaky to hear, because we were just talking about empathy and being meat sacks, just like our clients. But do you think it would ever get so good at actual communication that humans are getting that fulfilled through AI?
Yeah, and I think that's terrifying. And we've seen this already, right? So, I mean, there've been several articles already about folks who've effectively talked themselves into psychosis, right? Because they develop emotional relationships with the mirror, right? And the biggest reason to say this is a bad idea is not because AI is good or bad, but it can never be anything but a mirror. It only contains what we have given it about humanity. And so it can be an amazing mirror, right? And it's an indefatigable mirror. It will always be there. It will always answer you. It will take another hour with you trying to have this difficult conversation. That's super valuable. But the minute we start saying that replaces human empathy, I think we have made a terrible, terrible mistake, right? I mean, that's sort of the equivalent of saying to somebody who is depressed and low motivation that they should just watch some Tony Robbins videos and they'll feel better, but not talking to them, just handing them the disc and saying, watch these videos, you'll feel better. Right? That's a very shallow way of solving a problem. That's a Band-Aid on a problem. Taking something as fraught as an emotional monetary decision. I mean, we all know how much people get emotional about their money, and saying that a mirror is purely sufficient, that we can give you the mean human response and that will make you feel better and help you make better decisions. More importantly, I'm a big seller on that. I think it's easy to fool people. I think there will be people who do it and think that it is valid. And look, if any individual human being betters their lives by having a conversation with ChatGPT about their feelings, God bless. Better than the alternative, I suppose. But you know what? That's really the same thing as journaling. You're just journaling with a better mirror.
Interesting. So do you think advisors are going to, right now I don't know how we would rank it or what percentage is on technical communication, talking about the numbers and everything behind the numbers. Are we going to switch into more of kind of like the coaching mindset? Or I know there's been the Kinder Institute and all sorts of life coaching blend of financial advice. How do you think that's going to move forward in the future?
I think the financial advisor industry is rapidly moving toward the coaching model. I think that is the long-term success path. I mean, if you think about the different kinds of advisors we've always had, right? We've had advisor as portfolio manager. That was a big one for a long time. You're hiring this advisor because they're smarter about the markets than other people. They're going to make you more money. That's largely disappeared. Some of those folks still exist. Some of them have good client bases, but there's not a lot of brand new firms being launched that are going to be multi-billion-dollar enterprises based on the back of their advisors are individually portfolio managers. That's sort of a dead model. On the other hand, we have what I would call the traditional CFP kind of model of financial advisor, which is the one I think we would all associate with it, the traditional modern RAA, where you conduct this intake process, you learn a bunch about your clients, you figure out where they fit in a set of fairly predefined molds, and you get really good at the math and understanding the available opportunity set to help them achieve a set of goals. That's sort of the belly of what financial advisors are actually doing. And then way at the other tail of it, you have advisors that are much more coach. They're in their clients' lives. They're sort of maybe they're multifamily office type operations where you've got lawyers and coaches and folks who are helping with your teenage kids who have substance abuse problems, right? That's another whole model. The whole bubble of that is moving to that tail towards the more coaching oriented, more services, more sort of mini family office type environments. That's where to me, it's very clear that's where the financial advisor business is going to move. Now, as an advisor, maybe you individually don't have any interest in it, right? That's fine. That's a different set of questions, but you need to know that you're going to be competing against those folks, right? There are a lot of advisors out there who aren't really just doing wealth management stuff anymore. They're doing health and wealth. They're doing lifestyle coaching. They're helping folks deal with, late life spiritual crises, influxes of money from business sales that change how they view the world. Good advisors recognize when there's an opportunity to be a partner with their clients there. The challenge, of course, is how do you charge for those kinds of services? There's lots of different models. Some folks are just still on the AUM model. Some people offer coaching as a whole sort of side subscription business as well. I think we're going to see a lot of interesting ways of approaching that, but leaning into those more human, more relationship oriented parts of the business is the ultimate protection against AI encroachment.
Do you think the AUM model is going to have difficulty moving forward?
Well, I mean, we're still not fully on the AUM model. I mean, I've had some experiences recently and personally looking at some, what I've often referred to as wirehouse frankenfolios, where you end up with some 70-year-old account and you got these variable annuities and those A shares and these C shares. And oh my God, what is this private placement? And, just this mess of stuff that even the current advisor doesn't really understand. And that's not being charged on AUM. It's all, advisor rep comp going through some sieve to end up in the advisor's yacht. There's still a lot of that we got to get rid of, in my opinion, for this industry to be as healthy as it could be. So that leads us to the AUM model, which is certainly where the bulk of the assets are now, at least in or flowing. I think a pure fee advisor service a business model can exist. And there are plenty of examples of great financial advisors who run their practices that way. Rick Ferry comes to mind, notoriously only charges by the hour, not cheap, nor should he be. He's very good. There are folks out there that are like that. But when you move to that model, now you're a coach, right? Because now when your client calls you and says, hey, I'd like to book 2 hours of your time, and that's going to cost you $2,000 or $1,000. When that person shows up and they booked your time for their 2 hours for $1,000, you're going to talk to them about whatever they want to talk about. So whether or not you think you're a coach or not, you're a coach once you start charging them.
Interesting. One thing that gave me pause was this concept of the KVM rule, which is it's the idea that knowledge work done behind keyboard, video, or mouse will be the first to be automated out because that's the easiest to replicate. And thinking about our practice, 90% of the meetings we have are virtual. All of our work is done on the computer. I know there's a bunch of stuff we just talked about that doesn't quite apply. But in contrast, there's industries like healthcare, insurance, financial advice. They fall into this category of high accountability jobs, or those are roles where regulation, licensing, legal liability, all of that creates friction and slows down how quickly AI is going to be adopted, right? So do you think that the regulatory friction actually helps advisors in the short term or even the long term?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we are a long way away from a $10 million household with an estate planning problem, not wanting to know the person on the other side of those decisions. You really have to put yourself in that position. You have a
Right.
$10 million problem. For 1%, you can go get Bob, who's very good at what he does and has a team of people who've seen everything. And maybe they're using AI behind the surface or not, but you are talking to Bob, and Bob is the one helping you make your $10 million decision. What price are you willing to say, well, okay, if you're only going to charge me X, I don't need to talk to a person. I just trust the machine. I would argue there is no price, that you could drop the price of that to 5 basis points and the $10 million customer is still going to want to talk to somebody. I think that's just the real world. An example I would use, some medicine, for example, in the US medical system, which has plenty of problems. It's pretty unheard of that you go to a hospital, say, to have a stent put in for your heart and never see any of the people who are going to be in the operating. But that's essentially what we're saying AI is going to do. That you're going to check yourself in at the front of the hospital and they're just going to say, congratulations, you're getting a stent in. And then you go to sleep and you wake up tomorrow and you have a stent and you never met the doctor. You never met the nurses. No orderly came and talked to you and held your hand while they checked your pulse. That's the world we're talking about, where we think that $10 million client is just going to do this with AI. I am a huge seller that is going to happen in my lifetime.
Hmm. So we're talking about high net worth right there. And then there's also the masses who can be ignored by the financial advice industry. I'm guessing there's going to be options for the masses that might actually
Huge.
adopt. Yeah. And will use the AI advisor because of either simplicity or, would you, if you're talking to an advisor, would you say, continue to go up market or continue to help more complicated individuals for job protection in the future? Or does it not matter? Can I still focus on the average American and not worry about the higher competition there with AI platforms? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. I think it's important to recognize that the average American has no access to financial services whatsoever. If we're talking about certainly the median American, right? The median American doesn't have any investable assets to speak of, right? The median American doesn't have more than a few months saved. They're not the ones who, I mean, they could certainly use advice, but there is no business model that is going to somehow magically change their world. For them, for the average, not mass affluent, but truly mass market, right? 26-year-old with $6,000 saved in their bank account. AI is going to be huge because AI at the base of the coal mine, right? Your Schwab account, your Fidelity account, your Robinhood account, whatever it is, AI at that point can be a phenomenal gatekeeper and differentiator of services. So it's much more likely if I'm a $6,000 Schwab customer and I'm going into my account, that the AI will be able to help me make a better decision, say, about whether I should use a Roth IRA or not, right? Classic early employee question that advisors would get if they were treating those kinds of customers. AI can actually be great there. I would argue AI is already great there. Hop into literally any public AI and say, help me walk through a Roth versus non-Roth. You're going to get great answers. So for the mass market, I think this has been an overwhelming boon already. For the mass affluent market, right? That part where advisors might be fishing down like, oh, $1 million clients, can I really make money on that? There, the productivity gains that you get in the rest of your business may enable you to capture a bunch of those earlier clients. We all know they have their own appeal. Those become lifetime clients. Those small business owners become big business owners, right? That's how you really build, is when you get to ride your client's success. So I do think AI can help you build some of that. But again, the AI is not going to be the one doing the financial planning. The AI is going to get you freed up so that doing an hour meeting with a $1 million client ends up being good math. Right now, for a lot of advisors, that's not good math.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you say for an advisor who's listening now? We talked a little bit about this already, but anything else we should be doing to stay ahead of the curve, or just to be prepared for these quick changes that are happening every few months?
So on the one hand, it's really easy to get too in the weeds on this stuff. And I'm guilty of that myself. I've spent the last 2 months coding in AI. I have no business coding anything, right? Cool. So there's a lot of attraction just to playing with these tools and learning because they're changing so much, and they are incredible. They're like magic boxes. So I get it. But if what you're really interested in is staying enough in the loop that you maximize these productivity gains, that you actually take advantage of all of these potentials, there's really two things I would suggest. One is really look at your existing stack, right? Whoever it is you're using, actually poke around and see what they're doing. Is there a beta test for something that they could do? Like Morningstar just launched Mo, which is phenomenal if you're a Morningstar customer, but that's been in beta test. You could have been one of the people using that if you'd wanted to reach in there and be part of that process. So pick your existing set of vendors and talk to them about what they're doing and get involved in that. And then second, I really strongly recommend you subscribe to one, not all, but one of the $20 services, either Google's ChatGPT or Anthropic. Personally, I like Claude. I pay for all of them, but that's because I'm an idiot. Most advisors should pick one and actually use it. Like every time you go to search for something, instead use ChatGPT. Every time you go to prep for a meeting, with the caveat that you got to be careful about what you put into an AI, you can blindly ask it some questions about the meeting you're coming. I don't recommend you take Mrs. Smith's entire folio and dump it up into OpenAI because you've now probably committed at least 5 legal violations. Right?
Yeah.
But using it in your day-to-day workflow will help you understand where it's valuable and will also train you to be skeptical, which I think is the other really big important part. For folks that don't use AI every day, they have 2 or 3 great interactions with AI and they think it can do everything. It's really only when you live in it for a while, you recognize that 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 times, it's worse than useless. It's misleading and dangerous. And I think that you've got to experience personally, because if you don't develop your own BS detector, you're just like somebody blindly reading the news, assuming nobody ever has any bias and everything's true.
Gotcha. That's great. I know you're deep in the ETF world. Anything happening there that advisors should be keeping an eye out?
On the AI side, not really. There are plenty of firms out there promising that they've found a way to get AI to pick stocks and make money. You should be just as skeptical with that claim as you should be about anybody else's claim about how they pick stocks to make money, right? Most of them are wrong. Some of them will be right. And most of those people will be lucky. So like there are no free lunches because you slap AI on something. The rest of what's going on in the AI industry is largely irrelevant for advisors. The stuff that's being launched and hyped like crazy are ridiculous single stock products that use leverage or generate crazy income and wildly incompatible tax treatments for any financial advisor running a real business. So all of those products are largely toxic for a real advised relationship. There is some stuff in the buffered product space that is really useful, but you've got to be careful because there's now so much of it that there's good stuff and bad stuff. But using options to constrain your returns and manage your risk, that still makes sense. And there's a lot of those products coming to market. And then the other giant bucket is crypto. And at this point, if you're an advisor and you are not talking about crypto at all, you probably missed the boat, should deal with that. Or if you're an advisor and you're just jumping in with both feet because you think it's the hottest new thing, you should probably slow your roll there too, right? So having a sensible approach to crypto makes sense. Core exposure to things like ETH and Bitcoin is now easier and safer in the ETF wrapper than it is natively on chain, in my opinion. So if that is something you're putting into client portfolios, using ETFs makes a ton of sense.
I just saw Schwab is launching a competitor to Coinbase where you can buy Bitcoin directly.
Yeah, we'll see more of that, right? The boundaries are going to get mushier and mushier. I expect that every major financial services player within the next 5 years will offer some version of native crypto trading and will also offer the ETFs that are doing the same thing. I think for most advisors, unless they're really leaning into crypto being their specialty and they're dealing with very crypto savvy customers, I think most advisors should see it as just another alternative asset allocation. And if you're putting 2 or 3% of your clients' money into real estate, then you should probably be thinking about putting 2 or 3% of your clients' money into crypto as well, for exactly the same reasons. It's an uncorrelated asset class that could go on a crazy run or it could crash down to nothing, just like most things you put in the alt bucket.
That's great. Where can listeners follow your writing or your thinking? How can we find you?
Yeah, easiest place is nadig.com, which will get you to my Substack, where I will graciously ask you for $300 a year to support my work covering the ETF market, largely for advisors. I produce video content on YouTube at the Excess Returns podcast with Matt Ziegler and Jack Forian and Justin Carbonneau there. So you can see me there pretty much every week as well.
Awesome. We'll link to those below for you guys, for advisors. And this was awesome. Dave, thanks for making the time.
Hey, Thank you for having me. This has been a fun conversation. And hey, everybody be careful out there.